people are disproportionately excluded from juries in many areas. Not my opinion, it's not anecdote, it is fact and data. Prosecutors, as studies have shown now, use all sorts of reasons like too old, too young, or their hair is too long. I'm not making this up. These are reasons that actually came out in study here. But a case before the Supreme Court could actually change all that. Now, the High Court's deciding whether race discrimination came into play during jury selection in a Georgia murder case many years ago. A black man named Timothy Foster, convicted of killing a white woman named Queen Madge White back in 1987. Now, Foster, he was convicted, and he's been on death row for nearly 30 years. The jury issue was revived in 2006 when the state turned over the prosecutor's notes in response to a request under Georgia's Open Records Act. Here are some of the things they found in those notes, and they weren't even looking for jury or juror disqualification or whatever else. Here it is. The name of each potential black juror was highlighted on 4 different copies of the jury list, and the word black was circled next to the race question on questionnaires. 3 of the prospective black jurors were identified in notes as B number 1, B number 2, and B number 3. And some were disqualified for age Mayo because they were too young. Some were too old, and there was 20, 30 years difference in between them. I can keep going on and on. Okay. How common do you think this is? This was 1987 here, so we can say a lot's changed in 28 years or not. And how much as a prosecutor, and all 3 of you wore that hat, forget about the way it should be. Is it that you're getting pressure from bosses and everybody else to get the conviction, and you're going to try and populate those 12 folks here with people that are as sympathetic to your case as much as possible?
Well, some of the people aren't even getting pressure from bosses. That's their personality, is to go out there and to win. And as a prosecutor, you're uniquely in a position where you probably have one of the best jobs, period. You're there to seek justice, whatever that may be. And if you learn that the person charged didn't do it, you should have as much delight in dismissing that charge as you should in a conviction for someone who's guilty.
Now, in this particular case, nobody really seems to be disputing that there was deafening evidence here. The guy, by all accounts, he did it, was convicted and everything else. The prosecutor, who nobody at this table is going to defend here tonight, was saying, I just wanted to make sure that I got that conviction by any means possible, and I was going to try and put 12 people in the box to give me the best shot.
But that's not the prosecutor's job, and when you start saying by any means possible, then now you start to move outside of what's legally permissible. And if you were simply to change the dynamic here, and let's make it a rape trial, and you have some prospective jurors who are women, and the defendant doesn't want women, and you start circling W1, W2, W3, it's equally inappropriate, because what you're doing now is you're assuming that because of this person's gender, there's no way he or she can be fair. And you're really preventing the defendant from having a fair trial. You're removing anyone who could possibly be considered one of the defendant's peers from that pool.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
I haven't seen it in the practice where I've worked in Queens and Westchester, but I know that it happens, and I've read about cases, and this is appalling. I think it's important for people to understand there's 2 types of challenges. One are for cause. If you could demonstrate someone's unfair, you could strike as many people as you want. And then you have what's called peremptory challenges, where you don't have to give a reason. But the Supreme Court said in 1986 in Batson that you cannot use race as a reason for peremptory challenges. Just about anything else except gender, race is okay. So here, as you just said, they were actually writing B next to the names of black potential
jurors. That's creative, by the way. Yeah.
No, very clear. This is a year after the Supreme Court said you cannot do this. It's horrendous. I think it's going to lead to the conviction being overturned almost 30 years after the conviction
this case
for murder.
should not be in the Supreme Court. This is a factual issue for which there's no factual dispute. This should have been resolved in the state court. The conviction should have been overturned. The man should have been granted a new trial. There is absolutely no question that they excluded blacks because they were black, because the defendant was black, and because the victim was white.
This leads to the broader debate that's happening in several jurisdictions in this country, which is maybe it's time we revisit peremptory challenges. Like I said, all 3 of you guys I love your perspectives on this one. Been on both sides here. And do me a favor, give the 30-second explanation to the audience behind the ones where you can exclude somebody for reason, right? And then peremptory, where you just don't like their face, right?
Well, Here's the problem. You should not do away with peremptories. A cause challenge is when somebody says, I'll have a problem if the defendant doesn't testify, or something like that. That's a cause challenge. That person can't be fair, can't follow the law. Peremptory challenges are challenges that oftentimes are hunches. There's something about the person.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate, though, Jimmy. Why should you, as a hunch, disqualify a qualified juror?
Because it's not always a hunch. Let me tell you why perempts are so important. There are times you have judges that they just want to move quickly, they want to get a jury picked. I've got somebody that I truly believe I have demonstrated cannot be fair. I say, Judge, I want a challenge for cause. He goes, denied. I'll use a perempt because I think that person's unfair. So it's not always based on a hunch. You need to have a little bit of leeway.
But Mayo, some people are saying that's like you're playing a game of cards and you want to keep a couple, you're deciding threes are wild here and you're going to decide which peremptory ones you're going to execute on somebody because you don't like him. In effect, you know, if you had a more stringent judge in this case here, this guy would have gotten his way because there was 4 blacks that were in the jury pool. He would have used them 4 for this. Where's that?
Well, I think to go back to Jim's point, sometimes people should have been stricken for cause, and the judge doesn't strike them for cause. I mean, we've had trials where you go and the person says that, I believe because the person is sitting next to the defense attorney, they must have done something wrong.
But if I follow that logic, then if the judge makes a decision you don't like here or doesn't allow a witness, then you should get a second bite of the apple and say, I overrule you, Judge. I want to bring in another witness anyway. It's only in this phase of the trial where attorneys are getting basically, you know, whammy cards where they don't like somebody, so they bounce them.
That's because this is the determination of who's going to be the trier of fact. So you're looking at basically who is going to be able to look at you and determine whether you're innocent, whether you're guilty. Who here is going to say, you know, maybe I don't like people of a particular ethnic background, so therefore I'm more likely to find them guilty irrespective of any evidence. That's what it's going toward.
You think you should keep peremptories?
Absolutely, because in this case, the prosecution used peremptories to deprive the defendant of his civil rights, and that's why it'll be overturned. But peremptories also help a defendant. If the defense attorney can tell that a juror is probably not going to be fair to that defendant, maybe just through body language, things that they can't articulate and can't make a cause challenge based on, it helps the defendant to be able to have peremptory challenges. And as a prosecutor, I want someone who's going to be fair to the victim in the case, and sometimes that's based on instinct and things they say that aren't as big as what would merit a cause challenge.
If used properly by both sides, it's very productive and it does help. Now, you have the federal system where we don't even partake in jury selection, and there's this whole argument and, quite frankly, a movement to take our right to voir dire, to question jurors away entirely.
It doesn't just help the defendant. Sometimes as prosecutors, you know, you get an inkling that somebody just doesn't like the police. Okay, and so they're taking in the Freddie Gray case and they're going to apply that to your case, which has nothing to do with that. So you want to get that person off.
But we all know that we're wrong half the time, and that's the funny thing. Reading the tea leaves.
And we, of course, will see what the Supreme Court decides in this case, but interesting that they took it up to begin with.